Hello, cogitantes. So imagine walking into a room and before you even open your mouth, everyone inside has already decided exactly who you are, and what your worth is. And all that based on a single rumor. You haven't spoken a single word, but the verdict is already completely in. It is such an incredibly suffocating feeling. And today we will talk about how fiction processes that exact experience. Bodies that are judged before the person inside them even gets a chance to speak. So, where do we even begin with understanding Kainé's psychological landscape? Well, the best lens for this is actually this 1963 framework by the sociologist Erving Goffman. He called it stigma and the management of spoiled identity. So, stigma management. It's basically what happens when a person is forced to navigate life inside a deeply damaged social identity. Society reads a mark or some kind of difference before the person gets any say at all, right? Like this systematic exclusion. And the only reprieve she ever really had was her grandmother, Kali. Kali was what psychologists might actually call a holding environment. A holding environment. What does that mean exactly? It's basically a safe space where Kaine didn't have to constantly defend a right to exist. But then Kali is murdered right in front of her, and that trauma triggers this radical shift in her visual design. Like she adopts that incredibly revealing lingerie. And we know that the in game physical reason is that the shade inside her is weak to sunlight, but the psychological mechanism underneath is just fascinating. It's all about the total destruction of the private border. Okay, so I'm struggling with that a bit. Like, how does wearing something that exposing actually act as a defense mechanism? It sounds counterintuitive, I know, because wouldn't that just invite more of the village's judgment and completely compromise whatever privacy she even had left? I would think so, but that's actually the genius of it. The bullying had already taken her private body and just made it communal property. Her privacy was already completely stolen. So, by adopting this hyper femininity and extreme exposure, she isn't inviting them in. She's actually launching a counterattack. She takes that exposed territory and just aggressively claims it for herself. So it's almost like a prisoner painting a target on their own chest, because it takes away the executioner's power to intimidate them. The victim is basically saying, well, I'm already exposed. You can't use this to scare me anymore. She's actually dominating auditory space too, which brings us to the game's sound design. I mean, Atsuko Tanaka's voice acting. Tanaka is famous for these very cold, authoritative roles, but the brilliance here is actually in the profanity. I mean, Kaine swears constantly. The developers actually recorded the curse words in Japanese, but then intentionally beep most of them out. So you don't hear the actual curse, but you feel the shape and length of her silenced fury. It is a brilliant detail, because that works as this personal psychological defense. But I'm wondering how much of this was meant to be a critique of the wider society around her. Here is where it gets really interesting. There's a famous Japanese proverb: the nail that sticks out gets hammered down. Kainé's entire design just seems like this massive aggressive refusal to be that nail. She's actively dismantling two major social pressures here. The first is Haji, which is the shame of being seen as deficient by your community. So, by aggressively parading the very things they hate her for, she just completely refuses to internalize that shame. And the second is Sontaku, which is this invisible compliance where you conform to unspoken expectations before anyone even asks you to. So basically, by swearing and exposing herself, she forces that invisible compliance to just break down. She makes the unspoken incredibly loud. And you can see this contrast beautifully when you look at 2B's visual design. 2B represents total institutional compliance, while A2 represents raw, deconstructive damage. But Kaine, she's just refusing to play the game altogether. The game she's refusing to play is incredibly relevant to you and really everyone listening today. I mean, we live in this highly visual culture where bodies are constantly put on trial online. And the kids growing up in this environment, they are building the exact same armor that Kaine did. The medium completely changed, but the actual mechanism of stigma management is identical. It really makes you wonder how you might be building your own armor online today. Like what persona, what distance, or what target are you painting on your own chest just to survive the gaze of the internet? Which leaves us with this final thought to step back into the real world with. If you just walked into that room we talked about at the very beginning, and instead of a rumor, you were met with just complete unconditional acceptance, would you even need that armor you're wearing right now? Or does the armor we build to survive the room, well, eventually become who we are? Something to mull over. Until next time, happy thinking.